The power of language comes from rules and restraints, not from arbitrary imagination. Only by imposing constraints upon yourself can you make progress in the incantation arts.
3 months ago, I dropped a nuclear bomb on the Arknights Endfield community titled The Death Knell of Gacha Games, in which I decried their homogenization in the name of appealing to the masses, complete with deranged yelling at said masses.
Don't f***ing lie to me!
While everyone understands the need for gacha games to make money, the vast majority of people agree the combat is far too disconnected from the base, that Genshin-like homogeneity would be a disaster, and that hypergriff need to be true to their roots. However, the universal divide was the call to remove the dodge. Some agreed with removing it, some said just make it more strategic, some said remove the iframes, some said tie it to a factory item, and this guy decided I'm gay. But after being posted to Bilibili, it then spread further into other forums and became so divisive that some of those forums started arguing about the dodge button and whether the game should lean more into strategy or action, to the point where one content creator even made a response video because those arguments were getting out of hand. So, having briefly divided the community into warring factions, I will now attempt to do it again. I will now explain why the dodge button is a mistake beyond simply pointing a finger at those who want to keep it. In order to do that, we first need to look at how a few of the criticisms of combat in the technical test were addressed in the beta. Not all of them, just the relevant ones. This will be brief. The most common complaint was the slow pace and long downtime, which was addressed by what is essentially a total rework of the combat loop. Two of the most noticeable changes are the bullet time targeting being removed in favor of a lock-on system, and healing items being used automatically with per-operator cooldowns instead of having to bring up a sub-menu to choose who to heal. Previously, it was only limited by one operator at a time getting the heal with one cooldown for the squad, but now that it's automatic per operator, there's a limited number of charges on it while in battle. Perhaps the most important change, though, is the way skills work. That is, instead of each skill having an individual cooldown with the set number of uses required to charge your ultimate, skills now have no cooldowns at all and instead use a shared bar of SP, and you have to decide which character gets to use the SP you have. There is also the addition of combo skills, and being able to trigger each operator's combo skill is the key to building good teams and the easiest way to get a general idea of how someone is meant to be used. Plus, there was the issue of guaranteed attacks, which was addressed with the dodge button. Combine all these changes and the pacing of combat feels much faster. Right, now, where can we see how players felt about the... Oh. Players were clearly happy with some changes, considering all the praise and comparing it to the tech test, but nonetheless they were still not satisfied with the dodge, and they were not satisfied with the rate of SP generation. But unfortunately, much as they might insist otherwise, these complaints about dodges and SP are misguided, because dodging is not the root cause of the issue. It is virtually impossible to discuss dodging in video games without someone at some point bringing up Dark Souls, and endless comparisons to Souls-likes can get rather tiring, but in our case we have good reason to. Lowlight, the creator of Arknights himself, is known to be a huge fan of Elden Ring, and he has already confirmed the existence of references to it in Endfield. So let's examine the role of dodging in Endfield by first seeing what we can learn from Elden Ring. From Software are known for their enemy and boss designs for a reason. Enemies hit hard and you are expected to die repeatedly. The game provides you with several ways to mitigate that damage. Armor and shields are abundant, vigor increases your HP, etc. However, the ultimate form of damage mitigation would of course be total invincibility, and oh look, how convenient. Dodge rolls provide an accessible and unlimited supply of short windows of invincibility known as iframes. However, there are two important things to remember here. Firstly, attacking and dodging both consume a set amount of stamina. You must spend the same resource both to deal and avoid damage. And secondly, in essence, you cannot cancel the animations for either of them, leaving you vulnerable for their duration. As a result, you need to restrain yourself from dodging or attacking impulsively because the game is designed from the ground up to punish you for doing so. Delayed attacks and frame traps teach you to dodge sparingly and with intention, and one of the key challenges presented by the fast pacing of endgame bosses is pushing the limits of your stamina management. The result is a flow state where every action is a carefully considered commitment. If you were able to cancel attacking and dodging animations, that commitment would disappear and the game's skill expression would become a matter of optimizing those animation cancels. That might be okay in other games when the creators intend it, but a fundamental part of Elden Ring's identity is not just difficulty, but discipline. And without the risk and reward created by the commitment of your actions, that identity would be compromised. It is precisely because the game presents you with such challenges that you are rewarded with those moments of unbridled ecstasy in overcoming them.
Come on, come on! Come on! Yes! Let's fucking go!
Let's fucking go!
Holy shit, that was...
Now let's compare what we've learned from Elden Ring with combat in Arknights Endfield. While the goal of an attack in Elden Ring is purely to deal damage, in Endfield some of the first things the game teaches you in the tutorials are that your basic attacks deal very little damage compared to skills, skill points regenerate very slowly, and the last hit in your basic attack sequence, the final strike, will restore SP. The game is telling us that SP purposefully regenerates slowly because it's your job as the player to obtain more of it. In other words, basic attacks are not meant purely for dealing damage, they are primarily a step in the process of dealing damage. You use basic attacks to get SP with the final strike, which you then use to cast a skill which deals considerably more damage, which then triggers a chain of combo skills. You get the picture. Several combo skills are also triggered by a final strike, which is why you don't get SP from each individual normal attack, because it would make those combo skills very inefficient compared to those that aren't. Now, if you only have 1 bar of SP and you use it on a random skill that doesn't enable any combos or elemental inflictions, you'll then be left without much to do besides going and getting more SP. Consider also the example of Aviwenna. Her combo skill and her ultimate will place thunderbolts in the ground, and then with her battle skill, she retrieves those thunderbolts, dealing electric damage to everything in their path. But if you just use the skill aimlessly, all she does is a little jump and spin, which totally wastes the SP. Furthermore, consider the technical test's bullet time targeting, where every single skill cast forced you to make a decision because it was a 2-step process of selecting a skill and deciding a direction. You can see the pattern in what both versions of the game are asking of you. Endfield is trying to discourage carelessness while encouraging discipline and intent, and you can see that design goal throughout the game. The limit on the number of zipline towers you can have in a given region is meant to encourage you to be intentional with where you place them instead of just spamming them everywhere. Even the gacha system discourages you from just randomly pulling for no reason. Recall how Elden Ring punishes the player for pressing buttons impulsively. Using the same resource both to deal and avoid damage, and animations being uncancelable, work together to set a deliberate pace. But Enfield's design contradicts itself. It wants you to be disciplined and intentional while simultaneously allowing you to just dodge at will. Notice how the resources for dealing and avoiding damage are separated. In order to get the resource for dealing damage, SP, you need to get a final strike. Doing so often means you will need to take damage. There is a good reason one of the main purposes of the factory is to produce healing items, and also that the main stat on every single piece of gear is defense, which in Endfield means final damage reduction. Meanwhile, your resource for avoiding damage is stamina. Dodging will consume 1 bar of stamina, and the game starts you off with 2, but once you've collected all the Aetherium, that increases to 6, and at that point you don't even need to think of it as a resource anymore because in practice you just never run out of stamina to dodge. Which consequently means players do not have any expectation of restraint with the dodge button, nor of being willing to take damage. And in addition to that, every single attack and skill animation will be cancelled by dodging. The sole exception is Gilberta's Gravity Well, which is the only battle skill in the game that is in effect over a fixed duration as opposed to a single instance of damage or an instantly applied buff. All of this combined tells us that Enfield's dodge exists in direct contradiction to the discipline and intentionality the game is trying to encourage. It may well be possible to adjust it to complement their intended design goal, but if you are a beta tester who looked at the feedback section, you will have seen that in reality, the vast majority of players were asking for the opposite. More iframes, more SP, more rewarding, and so on and so forth. The astute observers among you might have figured out where this is going, but bear with me here because remember, dodging is not the root cause of the issue. To take a very brief detour and give necessary context for an example I'm about to use, in November, Arknights tried an experimental co-op game mode. Unfortunately, it took place a couple of weeks after the release of Wishadel, who was given the most ridiculous kit Hypogryph have ever made. Fans of Wishadel were naturally going to be inclined to use their shiny new win button, and so most of my co-op games consisted of my teammates deploying her, killing everything in sight, leaving absolutely nothing for me to do but sit on my ass and wait for it to be over because leaving early would put me on a matchmaking cooldown. To put it in other words, I had no agency. My teammates' use of Wishadel was preventing me from taking any action, and it was absolutely fucking miserable. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. Ark is an operator who deals a fixed amount of physical damage to an allied unit in return for a hefty buff, but Wishadel doesn't have enough defense to tank it. So I brought him to every game and immediately team killed every Wishadel I came across so that I could actually enjoy playing the co-op mode together with my teammate. So numerous were my Ark team kills that I decided to have a bit of fun with it by writing a song.
I'm taking matters into my own hands. This is my villain Ark. If none of you will let me play the game, I'll keep deploying Ark behind your dear beloved waifu Wishadel before I cast durian-flavored Stimpak resolutely up her ass.
Plenty of people were delighted with my mischievous musical merriment, including some Wishadel users themselves, as opposed to the Arknights subreddit, which banned me for 4 entire months. But while I will freely admit that yes, I was being a little bit insensitive, there were some comments on both the video and the Reddit post which elucidated a common point of view among those who were offended by it. Nearly all of them said something along the lines of, what if I don't care about the event? What if I want to just get the rewards and be done with it? It didn't matter to them that this was a cooperative game mode, and no matter how clearly it was explained to them that their use of Wishadel was preventing me from using anyone, it just fell on deaf ears. They didn't even enjoy the game, they just wanted the rewards that came after it, with zero consideration of how their actions might affect their teammates' experience. Now think about some of the complaints from the beta for a moment. Remember all those seemingly random requests for open world mechanics like wall climbing and grappling hooks and stuff? They must be aware that a major part of the game is relaying power and building your own zip lines, right? The inspiration from Death Stranding should be pretty obvious. You get to choose where the zip lines go, but you have to set them up yourself. You can't just have them without building them. But all those requests for random open world shit exist because whether you realize it or not, you're asking for exactly that. You want what the ziplines provide without the responsibility of building them yourself. Importing mechanics like grappling hooks and wall running and flying or whatever simply wouldn't work. The game is fundamentally not designed like that. It would completely trivialize every single terrain obstacle, and you'd then be left wondering why the world feels so much smaller. Because that constraint is not an oversight or a shortcoming, it is deliberate. Looking back to those earlier complaints from the beta about SP and dodging, if you're performing final strikes, getting SP is very simple, or you can just use Arknights to make it easier. But the player is insisting on dodging even when the game is punishing them for doing so carelessly. And instead of making that connection and deciding not to dodge, they are just asking for more SP and easier dodges. You may have noticed a pattern here. At first, the root of the problem appears to be that gacha players do not want their actions to matter. Except, that's not actually the full picture. Plenty of gacha gamers are perfectly willing to accept those design goals in other games. It's not as if they're all just unteachable and refuse to take responsibility for their actions in every part of life. But it seems to be near universal when they're playing gacha games. And that is where the real root of the problem lies. Gacha gamers have been taught their actions won't matter. And therefore, gacha gamers have come to expect their actions will not matter. The complaints from beta testers all stem from this root cause. Dodging when it's a bad move led to consequences, but your expectations are that dodging is never the wrong move. Pulling impulsively is always a bad decision, but because the rate of guarantee carries over in MiHoYo games, your expectations are that doing so doesn't usually make a difference. Setting up your own ziplines is a major part of the game, and not setting them up means you'll be walking everywhere, but your expectations are that of already having a plethora of locations to teleport to and of being able to fly around at will. Arknights Endfield's dodge button currently means deciding whether or not to dodge matters, but we saw earlier that players do not have any expectation of restraint because the stamina basically never runs out and the dodge lacks commitment. The commitment in the example of Elden Ring means you're punished for acting carelessly, and Elden Ring is known for that. Discipline is expected. Gacha games, on the other hand, are the opposite. They are known for having very few consequences. So when they introduce a consequence to something players aren't used to facing consequences for, it subverts their expectations of the game. The problem with gacha gamers is not a problem of commitment. The problem is that instead of reevaluating what their expectations are, they simply ask for the game to better match their expectations by removing those consequences. With Elden Ring, we saw that restraints on your agency create risk and reward, but when my co-op teammate prevented me from contributing, we saw that zero agency just creates frustration. The problem with the technical test was not the lack of a dodge, the problem was the lack of any agency in reacting to those attacks. Dodging is not the only solution to that lack of agency, but it is a popular one, which is why there were so many calls to implement it. But now with the beta, the problem is that dodging exists in contradiction to the discipline and intent they want to encourage. There are various solutions you could try to make the dodge actually complement the combat system, like basic attacks slowly reducing your stamina and only recharging it once you stop attacking, but that wouldn't solve the issue because dodging would still interrupt your basic attack sequence, so you'd still need to take damage to get SP, so gacha players would still complain. And if dodging didn't reset the sequence, combat would simply be reduced to a matter of optimizing animation cancels and memorizing optimal rotations, and the game's identity is compromised. The call to remove the dodge is not a call to bring back the guaranteed attack to the technical test, it is a call to change what that agency looks like. It doesn't need to be a reflexive dodge or parry button. Removing the dodge is an immediate way to force the player to reevaluate their expectations from the very start. Because if the controls and inputs do not let you dodge impulsively, then you have to reconsider how you're going to mitigate damage, which forces you to appropriately adjust your expectations of the game. That response video from Billy I mentioned at the start of the video makes a very good point related to this problem of expectations.
在我看来啊，相比于优化闪避的呼声，要求蓝图的声音可能还要更大。这些人可不会在要求蓝图的言论中拿那几个游戏给自己套盾。抄作业比起亲力亲为的闪避，才是最快捷、迅速删除掉一个玩法乐趣的东西吧？那为什么有那么多人对蓝图抄作业有需求？就是因为许多人他就是抱着吃快餐的心态去玩 Gacha 的。
He's absolutely right in saying that blueprints would be an atrocious idea, and if they'd been present in the beta, the Death Knell video would be sunshine and rainbows compared to the Doom posting I'd be doing in that timeline. But what I think his point of view misses is the fact that with Arknights, Hypergryph have been consistently reluctant to add any features that could be considered as the game playing itself or making decisions for you. It has never once had an autoplay button. You have to choose where to deploy your operators and when to activate their skills yourself, and only then do you get to auto-deploy. Likewise, in Endfield, their way of addressing the complaints about the factory was not to add blueprints, but instead to add loads of tutorials and a more intuitive top-down interface. The core design philosophy of do-it-yourself remains just as clear, which is why I don't think pre-made blueprints will be added anytime soon, let alone the ability to copy them from other players. But nonetheless, he is right. Those demands for blueprints will grow louder and louder because gacha players only want to eat fast food, the meal without the responsibility of cooking it. And to build on the analogy further, fast food might be convenient and tasty, but if you grow accustomed to it, serious health implications aside, cooking your own food will start to feel like a chore. Hypergryph have said they consider the infrastructure and automation to be the focus of the game, explicitly citing games like Factorio and Dyson Sphere Program as successful examples. But those games have an innate filter in having an upfront cost. Free-to-play gacha games do not have that barrier to entry, and they are surrounded by this bizarre culture of people playing multiple games they may not even like playing, while simultaneously demanding those games make it easier for them to maintain their account. In my years of playing Arknights, I have seen what Hypergryph can cook. They are not afraid to experiment, but it would be delusional to say they have never faltered before. If the game wants gacha players to enjoy the base, they need to change their expectations of the game, and they will not do that unless the game forces them to. If anyone is capable of squaring this circle of sticking to their guns while maintaining mass appeal, it is Hypergryph. But accessibility must not undermine identity. Arknights Endfield advertises itself as a real-time 3D RPG with strategic elements, and in China as a 3D real-time strategy RPG. Personally, I just think the gameplay should lean more into that. After the technical test, I hoped it would be slow, calculated, and stubborn, but Hypergryph made it fast, impulsive, and forgiving. That doesn't mean I think games with dodging are bad. But I have seen other communities become jaded, only able to sit and watch the obliviating drift of their beloved games towards an audience that has never cared. I have watched longtime fans of Monster Hunter resent the direction of Monster Hunter Wilds, ditching the necessity of positioning, anticipation, and commitment in favor of hitting a piñata that barely fights back, removing so many of those decisions and just going straight to the outcome because gamers don't understand why that decision was there in the first place. I have watched so many Endfield alpha and beta testers openly demonstrate they have precisely zero understanding of why some features and mechanics simply wouldn't work in Endfield, only able to draw upon experiences from some combination of Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, Zenless Zone Zero, Wuthering Waves, end of list. Openly stating they have no interest in the Arknights IP whatsoever and just want yet another iteration of the same game while consistently pretending to care about the game's success. You might have heard a quote attributed to one of the lead designers of the Civ series that gamers will optimize the fun out of a game if given the option to, even if it ruins their experience of the game. But no other subculture of video games, not a single one, will not only ask for that option before the game is even out, but openly ask for the literal backbone of the game to be removed just because they don't personally like it. Do you open Balatro and complain about deck building? Do you open Portal and complain about solving puzzles? If you complain that modern games don't try anything new, then shame them for doing so while rewarding the opposite. I hate to break this to you, but you are the problem. And if you start playing Arknights Endfield and you complain about the infrastructure and the factory, the very things that make it Arknights Endfield, that applies to you. Just make everything Genshin Impact! Big game always means better game! I'm not seeing enough movement! Put more shit on the screen! More big numbers, more random colors, more stupid bullshit! What is this depth you speak of? Or if farming's the only gameplay that matters, just make my waifu look cool when I press E and Q and take my money! Look at how cool the animation is! Time to build pity! Let's go gambling! Please win? No save! Only win! What do you mean building pity isn't a thing? All my friends build pity, obviously it's a thing, you fucking idiot. What is this Factorio shit? I don't have that kind of autism. I have the kind with no self-awareness or social skills whatsoever. Wow, chat, look, boobs. Absolute cinema, take all my money. What do you mean they slightly reduced Nicole's boob size? What do you mean I can't see Cantarella's camel toe anymore? This is preposterous. The Chinese Communist Party won't let me masturbate. Video game? What the fuck is one of those? Just make it easier to maintain my account so I can continue to not play the games I've built my entire personality around. Gacha games should do nothing but compete for my attention by replacing every UI element with Subway Surfers and Family Guy funny moments because my childhood cognitive development died the moment my parents decided to raise me with a fucking iPad. Sorry about the attention span, take 3 big booms to make you feel better. Don't even give me a gacha game, just give me a virtual baby playmat instead, where I can hit random objects while shitting my pants and crying about anniversary rewards. Because if I'm totally honest with myself, that's all I really want. Not a handcrafted experience by passionate game designers or a fun challenge to overcome. I just want a distraction. Something to keep me occupied so I don't accidentally start contemplating my meaningless existence on this godforsaken earth. Now just take one moment to seriously ask yourself, who is more deranged here? Me for crashing out in a YouTube video for your entertainment, or you for logging into 50 billion gacha games every fucking day that you don't even like playing, while having the audacity to demand every single one of those games respects your time when you don't even respect your own? I don't want Arknights Endfield to be filled with people who don't even want to play Arknights Endfield! Felt good to get that off my chest. That interview with Hypergriff I cited earlier from G-Cores ends with this paragraph. Innovation is no longer just a creator's aspiration for their own work. It's something the market increasingly demands. Simply improving production standards is no longer enough to satisfy today's players. So whether you want to or not, if you aim to achieve something in the current market, you must create something that is uniquely yours. On paper, this sounds great. In their own words, they want to innovate and create something unique. But we must not judge merely based on words. We should be judging actions, because actions have consequences. When scores of gacha gamers who don't want good games and just want a babysitter are all now suddenly very excited about Enfield's new direction, I find that to be kind of alarming. So I voiced a dissenting opinion. What better time to voice that criticism than while the game is still in development, when it can still make important changes? All that being said, I have cherished Arknights for this long for good reason. I look forward to finding out what they've been doing since the beta, because if they make the right decisions before release, then on my life I will become the world's #1 hypergrifter. Full turboglaze, no brakes. I would be delighted to live in that timeline. But until then, I remain patient. When the servers open, I will be there no matter what. Ready to know life Arknights Endfield, ready to experience everything it has to offer. I just hope I will also be ready to cherish it for years to come.